Hello, and thank you for joining me. Sausage. It's flavorful, it's versatile, it's economical, but for many of us, it's something that we have maybe never considered making ourselves. It seems complicated, perhaps, in some cases even infamously mysterious. There's that old expression about not revealing how the sausage is made. But I'm here to draw back the curtains and demonstrate that making sausage is really not that scary or complicated. And like homemade pie, bread, or soup, when you make it from scratch, the flavor doesn't lie. The sausage in question today is bratwurst. I had an Oktoberfest party back in the fall, and the brats were the star of the show. It is one of the most well-known sausages in the German tradition, but it is also beloved in America, particularly in the Midwest. So let's crack open a cold one and go to it. Before anything, I want to say a quick word about sanitation. Making sausage should be a clean process from start to finish. You don't have to be paranoid, just make sure you clean all work surfaces and equipment well before starting. I utilize not only the cutting board, but also the counter and the sink when making sausage, so they are also on the list of my cleaning routine. Let's start by focusing on the meat, in this case, pork. In sausage making, having the right ratio of fat to lean muscle is very important to achieve the right flavor and texture of your sausage. The ratio generally hovers around 70% lean meat to 30% fat. Of course, there are exceptions with some sausages being leaner or fattier, but this 70 to 30 is very common. And in the world of pork cuts, Boston butt is there to make your life easy because Boston butt naturally has about 30% lean meat to 30% fat. And it's also very affordable. Be aware your grocery store or butcher might label it simply as pork butt, and don't be afraid to ask if you have any uncertainty. Here in Denmark, finding Boston butt is a little tricky. Luckily, they have a cut called neck fillet, which hails from around the same area and thus has a similar lean to fat ratio. This is what you see me cutting up right now. This is not precise cutting. I will be grinding the pork with a meat grinder, so I'm just cutting it into strips that will fit in the opening. If you are planning to use a food processor to grind, cut the meat into cubes to make it easier on your machine. Also, given that the meat is easier to deal with in large pieces, I will go ahead and weigh it now. This weight will be important to our recipe in a bit. I ended up with 1,700 grams. Don't worry if your number is different. Once I have all those strips cut, I'm just going to put the grinder attachment on the stand mixer. And for this recipe, I'm using the coarse grind plate. Once everything is secured, I turn the power on, put it on medium speed, and start feeding those pork strips into the opening. Now that we've got all that ground up, let's talk about seasoning. I'm using a recipe that an instructor from culinary school gave me. Shout out to Chef Schneller. And he would be remiss if I didn't belabor the importance of seasoning. Properly seasoning your sausage not only ensures the end product is flavorful, but it also is a matter of safety, as salt acts as a preservative. We are making fresh sausage and not something air-dried like salami, but proper salting still helps control the growth of bacteria, and it helps achieve a proper moisture and texture. The original recipe calls for 5 pounds of ground meat, but when you are grinding your own cuts, it is rare that you will have the exact target weight. Luckily, it's super easy to adjust, even for a person like me who is terrible at math. Here's how you do it. The formula is new divided by old. The original recipe is for 5 pounds of meat, or 2,265 grams, but I ended up with 1,700 grams of meat. So my weight is the new number, and the original weight of the recipe is the old number. And when we divide 1,700 by 2,265, we get 0.750555188, which I'm going to call 0.75. This is our conversion factor. Now we just go down the line of ingredients and multiply them by 0.75, and we have an adjusted recipe. I don't give an exact number to the dash of mace or cardamom because I think it's still nice to leave a little room for nuance. But with the salt, it's good to be precise. If you don't normally weigh things or use grams, this may all seem fussy, but you can see with this recipe conversion how easy an exact adjustment is when you work in weight. In most fine dining restaurants where precision is key, recipes are all by weight. And it's not just a fancy thing. Commercial kitchens use weight to ensure safety and consistency in their products. Bread bakers go beyond just weighing ingredients. They have recipes that are purely in percentages, making adjustment even easier. Alright, enough math. Back to the seasoning. For these brats, I'm using salt and a little sugar in the center of the plate. Then clockwise from about 1300 hours, I've got paprika, mace, cardamom, coriander, sage, and then white and black pepper because I ran out of black pepper and was a little shy on the total weight needed, so I added a little white pepper. Also, speaking of adjustments, I cut back on the amount of sage because I find that if there's too much of it, it just ends up tasting like a breakfast sausage. Now for incorporating those spices. I add the seasoning to the meat and run the mixer using the paddle attachment. Texture is critical in sausage. Sausage is basically a tight emulsion of fat and meat. By using the stand mixer, it not only ensures that the spices are well incorporated, but it also helps make sure the fat is nicely bound to that lean meat. This is also why we add a little bit of ice water when mixing, which may sound strange to you, but it's actually very traditional in sausage making. Notice how the color changes from bright to slightly cloudy almost. This is a good sign that our meat is well mixed. Now moving on to stuffing. I'm using hog casings, which are traditional. Ask your butcher how to get some or order them online. I know for some people using pork intestine seems gross, but I firmly reject this. How is eating muscle tissue and fat any less offensive? It's not. Plus, I admire the resourceful origins of the craft, how butchers back in the day managed to find a convenient way to make more of the animal. Often the casings will come packed in salt. Mine weren't, but either way, we want to make sure we give them a good soak in some cold water, and then attach one end to the faucet of your sink and let the water run through them for a good minute or so. Of course, make sure to clean your sink well before and after the process. Now that our casings are nice and rinsed, let's attach our stuffer to the stand mixer and feed that casing onto the spout. Wet the spout with a little bit of water to make the process easier. Now I add some of the sausage mix and run the machine just until the meat reaches the end of the spout, and then I kill the power. At that point, I make a simple knot close to the end and turn the machine back on, feeding sausage into the stuffer. Eventually, you become frustrated and realize that this attachment is basically useless. You reach out to some culinary friends to confirm that you aren't just trying to be a bad carpenter blaming his tools. Then you run to the store and buy a proper stuffer. Even if getting it attached is a little squirrely, functional is better than non-functioning. This part of the process, the cranking out and shaping of the sausages, requires the most skill, in my opinion. You should see the professionals do it. It's impressive. Basically, you want to find a good rhythm, pinch gently at the end of the spout to regulate the pace that the sausage comes into the casing. Too loose and you won't fill the casing enough. Too tight and you might end up with burst sausages. Luckily, you can adjust either way after the fact if you are a little awkward at it like me. If you get air pockets, you can pop them with a clean sewing needle. When making links, err a little bit on the loose side. Once we have a good length of sausages, I give myself a few inches of casings and cut it free, and then tie it off. Then I try to pat down the sausage a little bit in an effort to even out the thickness. Then I start to divide it into links. I make sausage about once a year, so I'm pretty slow at it, but that's okay. I just pick a length that seems good and twist about 5 or 6 times. And it's okay that the consistency of my fill was a bit off because I can adjust now by squeezing some of the meat one way or the other. I do this moving down the link until I get to the end. It's okay if you end up with a tiny one, it's equally edible. Repeat this process until you've used up all your sausage mix. Don't forget the scraps at the bottom of the stuffer. Fry those up for a chef snack. Making links is fun, but you could also certainly keep them in one big, unlinked wheel. And if you can't find casings for some reason, you could also break from tradition and just form them into patties. And I'll show you one trick from the restaurant world on shaping sausages without casing. Lay down a couple big sheets of plastic wrap on a clean work surface. Form your sausage mix into an approximate log shape of your choosing. I'm using scraps, so mine is pretty small, but you can go bigger. Now bring the bottom of your plastic wrap over the sausage mix and roll the sausage up tightly, pinching and sealing at both ends. Now pinch the ends of the log and using the friction of the plastic wrap on the table, roll the sausage forward repeatedly until the package becomes nice and tight. Now you can take that improvised sausage and poach it in some barely simmering water, keeping it submerged in the water with the weight of a plate. And that's that. At this point, you can slice it up to fry or crumble it, whatever really. You can see mine had some air pockets in it, but you get the idea. Speaking of poaching, with regards to our links, I'm a big fan of poaching to cook them all the way through and then simply giving them color in the pan or on the grill when you are ready to eat. Especially with grilling, it's nice not to have to worry about charring the outside while the inside is still undercooked. Plus, it just makes the finishing process very quick and easy. And from a sanitation perspective, it's easier to store cooked meat compared to raw. To poach the sausages, I just bring a pot of water to a gentle simmer and drop in the links. These links are on the thinner side, so it's pretty easy to tell when they are done when they firm up. But if you have any doubt, make sure to use a thermometer. Once cooked, I want to drop those links into a cold water bath to chill them. If you soak your hands ahead of time and act quickly, you won't burn yourself when you grab them out of the poaching water. I don't think I need to tell you how to enjoy these. They are great in the pan, great on the grill, great with some potato salad, great with some mustard, great with a pretzel, great with sauerkraut, great with a cold beer, great with friends and family. And if you ended up with way more than you needed, they freeze great too. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this look into a process that is sometimes considered unflattering. But beauty in the food world is subjective anyway. Sausage crafting is an involved process, but most good things in life don't come without effort. I did a lot of talking in this video, so show some love by hitting that like icon and tell your parents to subscribe to my channel. When you hit subscribe, you don't get any emails or anything. It's all still just free content. And if you think I talked too much or used a bad recipe, make sure to let me know what I can do better in the comment section. Until next time, cheers.